The outer rim of the galaxy was a busy place. Hundreds of alien species came to the Andromeda trading nexus every day. They bought and sold goods, made deals, and talked about politics. The massive space station floated in the darkness between stars, its lights blazing like a small city. Ships of every size and shape docked at its ports. Some were sleek and fast, others were huge cargo vessels that moved like floating mountains. Lieutenant Jake Morrison stood at the viewport of his ship, the Horizon's Edge, and watched the station grow larger. He was a weapons specialist in the Terran Defense Force. His job was to know everything about guns, rifles, and combat tactics. He had been a soldier for 10 years and he was good at what he did. But now he was nervous. This was his first diplomatic mission. Humanity was new to the galactic community. Earth had only made contact with alien life 5 years ago. Since then, humans had been trying to prove they belonged among the stars. Most alien species looked at humans like they were children playing with toys. They thought human technology was old and weak. They thought human weapons were jokes. Jake knew this. He had read the reports. He had heard the stories from other human diplomats. But he also knew that humans had something special. They had survived wars, plagues, and disasters on Earth. They had learned to fight smart, not just hard. They had learned to make every bullet count. The Horizon's Edge docked smoothly. Jake grabbed his gear bag and headed for the airlock. Inside the bag was his standard-issue M4 carbine, 3 magazines of ammunition, and his sidearm. He hoped he would not need them, but a soldier always came prepared. The station's main hall was enormous. The ceiling stretched high above, covered in holographic displays that showed news from across the galaxy. Aliens of every type walked through the crowds. Some had scales, some had fur, some had bodies that glowed with their own light. Jake felt small and out of place. A human diplomat named Victoria Chen met him at the entrance. She was older than Jake, maybe 40, with sharp eyes and a tired smile. She had been working at the station for 2 years. "Welcome to the Nexus, Lieutenant. I hope you are ready for tonight. We have a diplomatic reception in the Grand Hall. Every major species will be there. Try not to start any fights." Jake smiled. "I will do my best." Victoria led him through the station to his quarters. The room was small but clean. Jake unpacked his gear and changed into his dress uniform. The dark blue jacket felt stiff and formal. He checked his appearance in the mirror. He looked like a soldier pretending to be a diplomat. He supposed that was exactly what he was. The Grand Hall was already crowded when they arrived. Music played from hidden speakers, something with too many notes that hurt Jake's ears. Long tables held food from a dozen worlds. Some of it looked good. Some of it looked like it might be alive. Victoria introduced Jake to various aliens. Most of them were polite but distant. They shook his hand with whatever appendages they had and moved on quickly. Jake could feel their judgment. To them, he was just another primitive human. Then he met Commander Zara Eth. She was Velkari, a species known across the galaxy as Master Warriors. Her skin was a deep purple color that seemed to shift in the light. Silver markings ran down her arms like tattoos. Her eyes were bright amber, sharp and intelligent. She wore ceremonial armor that looked both beautiful and deadly. She was tall, maybe 6.5 feet, and she moved with the grace of a trained fighter. Victoria made the introduction. "Commander Zaraeth, this is Lieutenant Jake Morrison. He is a weapons specialist with our defense force." Zaraeth looked Jake up and down. Her expression was hard to read. "A weapons specialist? How interesting. Tell me, Lieutenant, what kind of weapons does humanity use?" Jake kept his voice calm. "We use a variety of systems. Mostly kinetic weapons, rifles, pistols, machine guns, some explosives." A smile touched Zaraeth's lips, but it was not friendly. "Kinetic weapons? You mean you still throw metal at your enemies? How primitive. My people have been using plasma technology for 3,000 years. Our weapons can cut through starship armor from 3 kilometers away. They are clean, efficient, and powerful." Other aliens nearby had stopped talking. They were watching now, sensing confrontation. Jake felt their eyes on him. This was a test, he knew it. Zaraeth was not just being rude. She was challenging him, challenging all of humanity. Jake met her amber eyes. "Plasma weapons are impressive, Commander. I have seen the reports, but every weapon has strengths and weaknesses. Kinetic weapons have been refined by humanity over centuries. We have learned what works." Zaraeth laughed. It was a sharp sound like breaking glass. "Refined over centuries of killing each other, yes. We know about Earth's history. Your species has been at war with itself for its entire existence, and now you come to the stars with your primitive guns and expect to be taken seriously. The crowd had grown larger. More aliens were gathering to watch. Jake could feel Victoria tense beside him. This was getting worse. But Jake kept his calm. Getting angry would only prove Zaraeth right. I do not expect anything, Commander. But if you are curious about human weapons, I would be happy to demonstrate. The station has combat ranges, does it not? Zaraeth's eyes narrowed. You would challenge me to a demonstration? Not a challenge. Just a friendly comparison. You show me what your plasma lance can do, and I will show you what my rifle can do. Then we can both learn something. For a long moment, Zaraeth said nothing. She studied Jake like he was a puzzle she could not solve. Then she nodded slowly. Very well, Lieutenant Morrison. Tomorrow morning at the main combat range, I will show you why the Velkari are the greatest warriors in the galaxy. And you can show me what your little gun can do. She turned and walked away, her armor clinking softly. The crowd began to disperse, aliens talking excitedly in a dozen languages. Victoria grabbed Jake's arm. Do you know what you just did? Zaraeth is one of the best warriors in the Velkari military. She has won championships. If you embarrass yourself tomorrow, it will reflect badly on all of humanity. Jake watched Zaraeth disappear into the crowd. I know, but she was not going to let this go. Better to face it head-on than let her think we are afraid. Victoria sighed. I hope you know what you are doing. Jake smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. So do I. That night, Jake could not sleep. He lay in his bunk staring at the ceiling. His mind replayed the encounter with Zaraeth over and over. She was right about one thing. Human weapons were primitive compared to alien technology. Earth had only recently figured out how to build faster-than-light drives. Most of their weapons were still based on designs from the 21st century, but Jake also knew that technology was not everything. He had seen plenty of soldiers with expensive gear who could not hit the broadside of a barn. He had seen officers with all the latest equipment who fell apart under pressure. What mattered was training, discipline, and understanding your weapon. Jake got up and retrieved his rifle from his gear bag. He field-stripped it by touch in the dark, checking each component. The M4 was old technology, sure, but it was reliable. It was accurate. And in Jake's hands, it was deadly. He reassembled the rifle and loaded a magazine. He was not going to let humanity down. Tomorrow, he would show Commander Zaraeth and everyone else watching that humans might be new to the galaxy, but they were not to be underestimated. Morning came too quickly. Jake dressed in his combat fatigues and gathered his gear. He checked his ammunition 3 times. He cleaned his rifle until it gleamed. Then he headed for the combat range. The range was already packed with spectators. Word had spread fast. It seemed like half the station wanted to watch the primitive human embarrass himself. Jake saw aliens from dozens of species filling the observation areas. Some were placing bets. Zaraeth was already there, standing near the firing line. Her plasma lance hung at her side, a sleek weapon that hummed with barely contained energy. She looked confident, relaxed. When she saw Jake, she smiled. Good morning, Lieutenant. I am glad you did not run away. That would have been disappointing. Jake set down his gear bag. Good morning, Commander. I am ready when you are. The Rangemaster, a 6-armed alien named Borthal, stepped forward. He explained the rules. They would each face the same targets under the same conditions. First a stationary test, then moving targets, then targets at long range. The crowd would judge who performed better. Zaraeth gestured to the range. Ladies first? Or should I say primitive species first? Jake shook his head. You can go first, Commander. I insist. Zaraeth stepped up to the firing line. She drew her plasma lance with smooth grace. The weapon came alive in her hands, energy crackling along its length. She took aim at the first set of targets, armored drones hovering at various distances. Then she fired. The plasma bolts left Zaraeth's weapon like small suns. They crossed the range in the blink of an eye. Brilliant streaks of superheated energy. Each bolt found its target perfectly. The armored drones exploded one after another, metal vaporizing under the intense heat. The whole demonstration took less than 10 seconds. When the last drone fell, the crowd erupted in applause. Zaraeth lowered her weapon and turned to face Jake. The smile on her face was pure confidence. She had not missed a single shot. Her performance had been flawless. She walked back to where Jake stood and gestured to the range. Your turn, Lieutenant. Try not to disappoint too badly. Jake nodded. He did not say anything. Words would not help him now. Only actions mattered. He walked to the firing line and unslung his rifle. The M4 looked plain compared to Zara-Eth's plasma lance. It was just metal and polymer. No glowing energy or crackling power. Some aliens in the crowd actually laughed. Borthol activated a new set of drones, identical to the ones Zara-Eth had destroyed. They spread out across the range, their armor gleaming under the artificial lights. Jake took a breath and settled into his shooting stance. His feet were shoulder-width apart. His rifle came up smoothly to his shoulder. He looked down the sights. The first shot cracked across the range. It was loud, much louder than Zara-Eth's plasma lance. The sound echoed off the walls. The nearest drone jerked as the bullet hit its sensor cluster. The sensor shattered and the drone began to spin in place, blind and confused. Jake did not wait. His rifle barked again and again. 3 more shots, 3 more drones hit. Each bullet found a critical component. One drone lost its propulsion system and crashed to the ground. Another had its power core punctured and went dark. The third took a round through its control processor and simply stopped moving. The crowd's laughter had stopped. Now there was only silence and the sharp crack of Jake's rifle. He moved through the targets with calm precision. Where Zara-Eth's plasma had vaporized the drones completely, Jake's bullets created precise damage. His shots were surgical, hitting exactly where they needed to hit and nowhere else. When the last drone fell, Jake lowered his rifle and engaged the safety. He turned back to face Zara-Eth. Her confident smile had faded. She was looking at the destroyed drones with new eyes. They were not vaporized like hers had been. They were still mostly intact. But every single one was completely disabled. Borthol examined the targets and announced the results. Both shooters had achieved perfect accuracy. The crowd murmured. Some aliens looked impressed. Others still looked skeptical. Zara-Eth crossed her arms. Acceptable, Lieutenant. You can hit stationary targets. But let us make this more interesting. Moving targets at various ranges. And to make it fair, we will add obstacles. Jake nodded. That sounds fair. Borthol reconfigured the range. New drones appeared, these ones faster and more agile. Barriers and walls rose from the floor, creating a maze of cover. The drones darted in and out of sight, their movements unpredictable. This was much harder than the first test. Zara-Eth went first again. She moved along the firing line, her plasma lance tracking targets. When a drone appeared, she fired. The plasma bolts were so fast that the drones had no time to react. But the barriers were a problem. Plasma was energy, and energy dispersed when it hit solid objects. Several of her shots splashed against the barriers, the heat spreading across their surfaces but not penetrating. She had to wait for clear shots, which took more time. Still, she was good, very good. She destroyed 8 out of 10 drones. The crowd applauded again, impressed by her skill. Zara-Eth stepped back, breathing slightly harder. She looked satisfied. Jake took his position. The new set of drones activated, zipping through the obstacle course. He watched them for a moment, learning their patterns. Drones followed programming. Even random movements had underlying logic. He just had to find it. He fired his first shot through a narrow gap between 2 barriers. The bullet traveled in a straight line, unaffected by the edges of the obstacles. It caught a drone on the far side and sent it crashing down. His second shot ricocheted off a metal barrier at a calculated angle, hitting a drone that was hiding behind cover. The aliens in the crowd began to pay closer attention. This was something they had not expected. Jake was not just shooting at targets. He was using the environment. Bullets did not spread like plasma. They went exactly where they were aimed, and sometimes they could go around corners. Jake destroyed all 10 drones. His magazine ran dry with the last shot. He ejected it smoothly and loaded a fresh one. The whole reload took less than 3 seconds. When he turned around, even the skeptical aliens looked impressed. Zara-Eth's expression was harder to read now. Borthol announced the score. Jake had achieved perfect accuracy again. The crowd's applause was louder this time. Zara-Eth walked over to examine where Jake had been shooting. She looked at the barrier where he had bounced a bullet. You ricocheted a shot. That requires understanding physics and trajectory at a level I did not expect from a human. Jake checked his rifle. We have had a lot of practice. When you fight wars for thousands of years, you learn every trick. Zara-Eth said nothing for a moment. Then she looked at Borthol. One more test. I want to see how these primitive weapons handle armor. Borthol nodded and brought out a large block of composite armor. It was the same material used in coalition warship hulls, layered and reinforced. The block was 6 inches thick and could withstand tremendous punishment. He placed it on a stand at medium range. "This is military-grade armor," he explained, "used on cruisers and destroyers throughout the fleet. It is designed to resist both energy and kinetic weapons." Zara-Eth raised her plasma lance and fired at the armor block. The bolt hit with tremendous force. The surface of the armor glowed white-hot. Metal began to melt and run like water. The heat was so intense that Jake could feel it from where he stood. But when the glow faded, the armor was still intact. The plasma had created a large crater on the surface, maybe 3 inches deep, but it had not penetrated all the way through. The energy had spread across the armor's surface, dispersing the damage. Still impressive, Jake thought. That kind of heat would cook anyone inside a ship or vehicle, but the armor itself had held. Zara-Eth lowered her weapon and looked at Jake. "Your turn, Lieutenant. Let us see what your bullets can do against real armor." Jake pulled out a different magazine from his gear bag. These were armor-piercing rounds designed specifically to defeat hardened targets. He loaded the magazine and chambered a round. He took aim at the armor block, focusing on a point near the center. The shot rang out. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then Jake walked forward to examine the armor. Zara-Eth followed him, curious despite herself. Where the bullet had hit, there was a small hole. It was barely wider than the bullet itself. Jake walked around to the back of the armor block. There was an exit hole on the far side. The bullet had punched clean through all 6 inches of composite armor. The hole was narrow and precise. All the kinetic energy had been focused into a single point. The armor might as well have been paper. The crowd erupted in noise. Some aliens were cheering. Others were arguing. Borthal examined the hole with all 6 of his arms, measuring it with instruments. He looked shocked. Complete penetration. The kinetic round transferred all its energy through the target with minimal dispersal. "I have never seen anything like this from such a small weapon." Zara-Eth ran her fingers over the entry hole. Her amber eyes were wide. She looked at Jake with an expression he had not seen before. It was not quite respect yet, but the contempt was gone. In its place was curiosity and something that might have been the beginning of understanding. "This is impressive," she admitted. "Your weapon is more capable than I believed. But shooting targets on a range is one thing. Combat is another. Can you use this weapon when someone is shooting back at you?" Jake met her eyes. "I have been in combat before, Commander. I know the difference between practice and the real thing." Zara-Eth nodded slowly. "Perhaps I judged your species too quickly. You have proven your weapons are not as primitive as they appear. I apologize for my earlier words." The apology surprised Jake. He had not expected it. Velkari were known for their pride. For Zara-Eth to admit she was wrong, even partially, meant something. "Apology accepted, Commander. And for what it is worth, your plasma lance is an incredible weapon. In open combat, it would be devastating." Zara-Eth smiled, and this time it seemed genuine. "Perhaps we both have something to learn from each other." The crowd began to disperse, aliens talking excitedly about what they had seen. Jake collected his gear and headed back to his quarters. He felt good about the demonstration. He had proven that human weapons deserved respect. But more than that, he had made a connection with Zara-Eth. Maybe humanity and the Velkari could find common ground after all. That night, Jake was cleaning his rifle when his communicator beeped. It was a message from the station's security office. There was a situation developing. All military personnel were being asked to stand by. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. The timing could not be coincidence. He grabbed his gear and headed for the armory. Whatever was coming, he needed to be ready. The emergency klaxons were deafening. Red lights flashed throughout the station's corridors. Jake reached the armory at a run, his boots pounding on the metal deck plates. Other soldiers and security personnel were already there, grabbing weapons and checking gear. The mood was tense and focused. A security officer named Lieutenant Moss briefed them quickly. Pirates had hit the station. The Red Talon Syndicate, a notorious group of raiders that operated in this sector. They had come in fast with 6 ships, breached the outer defenses, and landed boarding pods in 3 different sections. Early reports said they had at least 50 raiders inside the station, maybe more. "They are hitting the commercial sectors," Moss said. "Taking hostages. Station security is spread thin. We need everyone who can fight." Jake loaded his magazines and checked his rifle. This was real. No more demonstrations or target practice. People's lives were on the line. He felt the familiar focus that came before combat. the way his mind sharpened and his senses heightened. The armory door opened and Zara strode in, already wearing her combat armor. Unlike the ceremonial armor she had worn at the reception, this was pure function. Matte black plates covered her vital areas, and her plasma lance hung at her side. 3 other Velkari warriors followed her, all armed and ready. She spotted Jake and walked over. "Lieutenant Morrison, it seems your question about combat is about to be answered. My team is moving to evacuate civilians from the market district. Will you join us?" Jake slung his rifle. "Lead the way, Commander." They moved out in a group of 8, 4 Velkari warriors, Jake, and 3 station security officers. Zara took point, moving through the corridors with confidence. She knew the station layout well. Jake stayed close behind her, his rifle at the ready. The security officers brought up the rear. The first sign of trouble came at an intersection near the market district. Scorch marks on the walls, broken glass, an abandoned cargo container. Then they heard shouting ahead, followed by the distinctive whine of energy weapons. Zara held up a hand for silence. She pointed to 2 of her warriors and gestured right. They nodded and moved to flank. She gestured to the others to follow her straight ahead. Jake moved with her, staying low. They rounded the corner and saw the raiders. 6 of them, mixed species. They had set up a makeshift barricade and were firing down the corridor at something Jake could not see. Probably station security. The raiders were focused on their front, not watching their rear. Zara did not hesitate. She opened fire with her plasma lance. The first bolt caught a raider in the back, dropping him instantly. The others spun around, trying to return fire, but they were caught in a crossfire now. The 2 Velkari warriors who had flanked right opened up from the side. It was over in seconds. Jake had not needed to fire a shot. The Velkari had handled it perfectly, but he stayed alert. This was just the beginning. They pushed forward, clearing the corridor section by section. The market district was chaos. Stalls were overturned, goods scattered everywhere. Civilians huddled in corners, terrified. Some were wounded. The security officers began organizing an evacuation while Zara-Eth's team secured the perimeter. Then they heard the sound Jake had been dreading. Heavy footsteps, a lot of them, coming fast. He looked at Zara-Eth. She heard it too. She positioned her warriors at choke points, creating overlapping fields of fire. Jake took cover behind a structural column, his rifle aimed down the main approach. The raiders came around the corner in a rush. 10, maybe 12 of them. They were better armed than the first group. Jake saw combat armor, heavy weapons, and what looked like personal shields on a few. These were not random thugs. These were professional soldiers. The Velkari opened fire immediately. Plasma bolts filled the corridor with light and heat. Raiders dropped, their armor no match for the concentrated fire. But the ones with shields kept coming. The plasma splashed harmlessly off the shimmering barriers. One raider raised a massive energy cannon and fired. The bolt hit the wall next to Zara-Eth, and she had to dive for cover as debris exploded outward. Jake saw his opening. The raider with the energy cannon was focused on Zara-Eth. Jake aimed carefully and fired. His bullet caught the raider in the gap between his helmet and chest armor. The raider staggered and fell. The energy cannon clattered to the ground. Another raider tried to flank using a cargo container for cover. Jake could not see him, but he could see the barrel of his weapon sticking out. Jake fired at the weapon itself. The bullet struck the energy cell. It exploded in a shower of sparks. The raider screamed and dropped the ruined weapon, clutching his burned hand. Zara-Eth noticed Jake's precision. While her warriors were laying down suppressing fire, Jake was taking careful shots, hitting critical targets. He was not wasting ammunition. Every bullet had a purpose. She found herself adjusting her tactics, working with Jake instead of around him. The raiders with shields were still advancing. Their barriers were holding against the plasma fire. Zara-Eth growled in frustration. She could not get through. Jake saw the problem. Energy shields were designed to diffuse energy weapons, but kinetic projectiles were different. They had mass. They had momentum. He switched to his armor-piercing rounds and studied the shields. They were not perfect. The energy field was strongest in front, weaker on the sides and back, and the generator had to be somewhere on the raider's body. probably on the back where it was harder to hit. Jake waited for his moment. One of the shielded raiders turned slightly to fire at a Velkari warrior. Jake saw the generator on the raider's back, a bulky device with cooling fins. He fired. The bullet punched through the weak spot in the shield and destroyed the generator. The shield flickered and died. Zara-Eth did not waste the opportunity. Her plasma lance took the unshielded raider down. She looked at Jake with new respect. That was excellent shooting. Jake reloaded. 2 more shields to go. He repeated the tactic twice more. Each time he waited for the angle, took the shot, and dropped the shield. Each time Zara-Eth or her warriors finished the job. They were working together now, combining their strengths. The Velkari provided overwhelming firepower. Jake provided precision. The last raider fell. The corridor went quiet except for the ringing in everyone's ears. Smoke hung in the air. The security officers rushed forward to secure the wounded raiders and check for more threats. Zara-Eth walked over to Jake. Her armor was scorched, and her breathing was heavy. "You fight well, Lieutenant. Your weapon has more versatility than I anticipated. The way you disabled those shield generators, that was tactical thinking of a high order." Jake ejected his magazine and loaded a fresh one. "It is not about the weapon, Commander. It is about knowing how to use it. Your plasma lances are devastating in open combat. My rifle works better for precision shots. Together, we cover each other's weaknesses." Zara-Eth nodded. "I am beginning to understand that. Come. We need to keep moving. There are more civilians to evacuate." They pushed deeper into the station, clearing sections and evacuating civilians. The fighting was intense, but the team worked well together. The Velkari warriors learned to trust Jake's marksmanship. Jake learned to work with their aggressive tactics. Zara-Eth coordinated it all with the skill of a born leader. In one cargo bay, they found 30 civilians trapped behind locked doors with raiders trying to breach. The Velkari hit the raiders from one side, while Jake provided covering fire from the other. The civilians were freed without casualties. In another section, they encountered a raider sniper on an upper level. The sniper had pinned down a group of station security. The Velkari could not get an angle with their plasma lances. Jake did. He took the shot from 300 meters. The sniper fell. Hour by hour, they took back the station. But then word came over the communications net. The main body of raiders had seized the command center. They had hostages, including the station commander. They were demanding a massive ransom and safe passage. If they did not get it, they would start executing people. Zara-Eth called a halt. Her team gathered in a maintenance corridor 3 levels below the command center. They were tired. Ammunition was running low. Her warriors had taken minor wounds. Jake's rifle barrel was hot from sustained fire. "We need to regroup," one of the Velkari warriors said. "Wait for reinforcements from the fleet." Zara-Eth shook her head. "The fleet will not arrive for hours. Those hostages do not have hours. The raiders will start killing them to prove they are serious. We need another option." Jake studied the tactical map on his datapad. The command center was heavily fortified. The raiders had set up barricades and heavy weapons at all the main entrances. Any frontal assault would be suicide. But there might be another way. He pointed to a maintenance shaft on the map. This shaft runs right up to an auxiliary control room next to the command center. It is too narrow for the raiders to defend properly. 3 of us could go up, breach from inside while you create a diversion at the main entrance. Zara-Eth studied the map. That shaft is barely wide enough for 1 person. If they detect you, you will be trapped. Then we make sure they do not detect us, Jake said. Can your warriors create enough noise to keep the raiders focused on the front? Zara-Eth's eyes gleamed. My warriors can make all the noise you need, Lieutenant, but you will need someone who knows close quarters combat to watch your back in those tight spaces. Shala smiled. Duty or not, you have earned the gratitude of everyone on this station. When the full report is filed, I will make sure your actions are properly recognized. As Shala moved on to coordinate the cleanup, Jake and Zara-Eth looked at each other. Without words, they both knew that this was not the end of something. It was the beginning. The beginning of a partnership, maybe even the beginning of a friendship. Come, Zara-Eth said. Let us get cleaned up. Then I think we should talk. There is much I want to learn about human combat tactics, and much I can teach you about Velkari methods. Jake smiled. I would like that, Commander. They walked out of the command center together, leaving the chaos behind. Outside, the station was slowly returning to normal. The lights were coming back on. The klaxons had stopped. The maintenance shaft was even more cramped than Jake had expected. He went first, crawling through the narrow tunnel with his rifle slung across his back. The metal walls pressed in on both sides. Pipes and cables lined the shaft, leaving barely enough room to move. Behind him, he could hear Zara-Eth breathing steadily. She had left her bulky armor behind and wore only light tactical gear. Behind her came Vrex, the security chief who had insisted on joining them despite his bulk. The shaft angled upward at a steep incline. Jake's arms burned from pulling himself forward. Sweat dripped into his eyes. The air was hot and stale. Every sound seemed amplified in the confined space. If the raiders detected them now, they would be sitting ducks. But Jake kept moving. He had done this kind of infiltration before back on Earth. Tight spaces, high risk, everything depending on stealth and speed. He focused on controlling his breathing, moving smoothly and quietly. Behind him, Zara-Eth matched his pace perfectly. For a warrior trained in open combat, she adapted to close quarters remarkably well. After what felt like an hour but was probably only 15 minutes, they reached the access hatch. Jake could hear voices on the other side. He pressed his ear to the metal and listened. 2 raiders talking casually. They sounded bored. Good. Board guards made mistakes. Jake pulled out a compact plasma torch that Zara-Eth had given him. He began cutting through the lock mechanism, working slowly to avoid making noise. The metal glowed orange, then white. Drops of molten steel fell away. The lock clicked open. He looked back at Zara-Eth and held up 2 fingers. She nodded, drawing her sidearm. They would have to do this quietly. Jake slowly, carefully opened the hatch just a crack. Through the gap, he could see the auxiliary control room below. 2 raiders stood near a bank of monitors watching the screens. One was a Vorthak, big and heavily built. The other was a Kreth, smaller but armed with a nasty-looking energy rifle. Jake opened the hatch wider and dropped through in one smooth motion. His suppressed pistol was already in his hand. 2 shots, barely louder than coughs. Both raiders went down before they could make a sound. Zara-Eth dropped down beside him, landing with feline grace. Vrex struggled through the narrow opening, his bulk making it difficult, but he managed. They were in. Jake moved to the door connecting the auxiliary room to the main command center and looked through the small window. What he saw made his jaw tighten. The command center was full of hostages, maybe 40 people, all bound and sitting on the floor. Raiders moved among them, weapons ready. At the center of the room stood Krell, the Vorthak leader of the Red Talon Syndicate. He was massive, covered in scars and holding an energy cannon that looked like it could punch through a tank. Zara-Eth looked over Jake's shoulder. How many raiders? Jake counted quickly. 12 inside, plus Krell. Most of them are focused on the main entrance. They are expecting an attack from there. Zara-Eth checked her plasma lance. When we breach, it will be chaos. Stay close to me. Protect the hostages first. Jake pulled out breaching charges and began placing them on the door. Small, powerful explosives that would blow the door inward without causing excessive collateral damage. He set the timer and moved back. Vrex readied his heavy pistols. Zara-Eth's plasma lance hummed to life. Jake's communicator chirped quietly. It was the signal from Zara-Eth's team. They were in position at the main entrance, ready to create the diversion. Jake keyed back in acknowledgement. Then he looked at his companions. On my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark. 2 things happened at once. The breaching charges exploded, blowing the door inward in a shower of sparks and debris. And at the main entrance, the Velkari warriors opened fire with everything they had. Plasma bolts hammered the raiders' barricades. The sound was deafening. Jake was through the breach before the smoke cleared. His rifle came up and he started firing. Short, controlled bursts. A raider to the left went down. Another to the right. He moved fast, using the confusion and smoke as cover. The raiders were caught completely off guard. Half of them were facing the wrong way. Zara-Eth was right behind him, her plasma lance cutting down targets with lethal precision. She moved like a dancer, graceful and deadly. A raider tried to shoot her. She shot him first. Another raised his weapon. Her plasma bolt took him in the chest. Vrex charged toward the hostages, his bulk and firepower creating a protective barrier. He fired both pistols at any raider who came near the civilians. His aim was not as precise as Jake's or as devastating as Zaraeth's, but his presence was intimidating enough to keep the raiders back. The battle was pure chaos. The command center was not large, and now it was filled with weapons, fire, smoke, and shouting. Raiders tried to organize a defense, but they were caught between two fires. The frontal assault kept hammering them from one side. Jake, Zaraeth, and Vrex attacked from behind. It was too much. Raiders began to surrender or flee. Some dropped their weapons and raised their hands. Others tried to reach the escape pods. The Velkhari warriors pushed through the main entrance now, overwhelming the broken barricades. It was over. Almost Krell had not given up. The Vorthak leader roared with rage and swung his massive energy cannon toward the hostages. If he was going down, he would take as many people with him as he could. The cannon began to charge, energy crackling along its barrel. The hostages screamed. Jake saw it happening. He did not think. There was no time to think. He just reacted. His rifle came up, he aimed. Not at Krell, at the energy cannon's power cell. It was a tiny target, maybe 2 inches across, and it was moving. The shot was nearly impossible. Jake fired. The bullet traveled across the command center and struck the power cell dead center. The cell exploded. Energy erupted in all directions. Krell was thrown backward by the blast, his cannon destroyed. He hit the wall hard and slid to the ground. He did not get up. Silence fell over the command center. The hostages were safe. The raiders were defeated. Medical teams rushed in to help the wounded. Station security began securing the area. Jake lowered his rifle, suddenly aware of how tired he was. His hands were shaking slightly from adrenaline. Zaraeth walked over to him. Her armor was scorched and scratched. There was a cut above her eye, bleeding purple. But she was smiling. That shot, that last shot. I have never seen anything like it. The precision required, the timing, it was incredible. Jake ejected his magazine. It was empty. He had used every round. Just training, Commander. Lots and lots of training. Zaraeth shook her head. No, that was more than training. That was skill, instinct. You saved those hostages. You saved all of us. We saved them, Jake corrected. Your team created the diversion. Vrex protected the civilians. You cleared the room. It was teamwork. Zaraeth looked at him for a long moment. Then she did something that surprised him. She placed her hand on his shoulder, a gesture of respect among Velkhari warriors. I owe you an apology, Lieutenant Morrison, not just for my words at the reception. I owe you an apology for my entire attitude. I judged your species based on assumptions and prejudice. I was wrong. Your people may be new to the galaxy, but you have much to teach us. Jake felt a warmth in his chest. Coming from Zaraeth, this meant something. And we have much to learn from you, Commander. Your warriors are among the best I have ever seen. The way you coordinated the assault, the way you adapted to changing conditions, that was leadership of the highest order. They stood together in the ruined command center. 2 warriors from different worlds who had found common ground in battle. Around them, station personnel worked to restore order. The danger had passed, but Jake knew that something important had happened here, something beyond just defeating pirates. Humanity had proven itself. Not through boasting or demands for respect, but through action. Through skill and courage and the willingness to fight alongside allies. Jake had shown that human weapons, while less advanced, were effective in the right hands. He had shown that humans could think tactically, adapt quickly, and handle pressure. But more than that, he and Zaraeth had formed a bond. A connection that went beyond their respective species. They had fought together, trusted each other with their lives, and come through victorious. That kind of bond was rare and precious. The station commander, a dignified Kreth woman named Administrator Shala, approached them. She looked exhausted but grateful. On behalf of the Andromeda Trading Nexus, I thank you both. Your courage saved countless lives today. The Coalition will hear of this. Both the Velkhari Empire and the Terran Defense Force should be proud. Zaraeth bowed slightly. We did only our duty, Administrator. Jake nodded in agreement. We are just glad we could help. The days following the pirate attack were busy. Station repair crews worked around the clock fixing damaged sections. Medical teams tended to the wounded. Security forces processed captured raiders. The station slowly returned to normal, but everyone knew how close they had come to disaster. Jake spent most of that time with Zaraeth and her team. What started as a tactical debrief evolved into something deeper. They met at the combat range each morning, exchanging techniques and philosophies. Zaraeth showed Jake how Velkari warriors used plasma weapons in coordination, creating overlapping fields of fire that left no gaps for enemies to exploit. Jake demonstrated human marksmanship principles, the focus on breath control and trigger discipline that made every shot count. But their conversations went beyond just weapons. They talked about their worlds, their cultures, their experiences. Jake learned that the Velkari valued honor above all else, that their entire society was built around codes of conduct that had existed for thousands of years. Zaraeth learned that humans, despite their short time in space, had a remarkable capacity for adaptation and innovation born from countless struggles. "I am curious about something," Zaraeth said one morning as they cleaned their weapons. "Your species has only been exploring space for a few decades, yet you fight with the confidence of warriors who have been doing this for centuries." How Jake looked up from his rifle. "Because we have been fighting for centuries, just not in space. Earth has known constant warfare for its entire recorded history. Every generation learned from the one before. We refined our tactics through bitter experience. When we finally reached the stars, we brought all that knowledge with us." Zaraeth nodded slowly. "The Velkari had peace for long periods. We developed our martial arts more as tradition than necessity. Perhaps that is why we grew complacent. We assumed our advanced technology meant we were superior. We forgot that skill and experience matter as much as equipment. Technology helps," Jake agreed, "but it is not everything. A good soldier with basic weapons can defeat a poor soldier with advanced weapons every time." The other aliens on the station noticed the growing friendship between Jake and Zaraeth. What had started as a public challenge had become a partnership that many species found intriguing. Diplomatic representatives began approaching Jake, asking questions about humanity and its capabilities. The dismissive attitude he had encountered when he first arrived was gone. Now people wanted to learn. Victoria Chen, the human diplomat, was pleased. "You have done more for human-alien relations in 1 week than I accomplished in 2 years, she told Jake. "The coalition is taking notice. I have received inquiries from 3 different species about establishing military training exchanges with Earth." Jake was surprised. "Really, that is good news," Victoria smiled. "The Velkari Empire is leading the way. Commander Zaraeth has submitted a formal proposal to her government, recommending a comprehensive military cooperation program with humanity. If it is approved, it could change everything for us." Jake thought about that. It made sense. The Velkari were one of the most respected military powers in the galaxy. If they endorsed human capabilities, other species would follow. But more than the political implications, Jake was glad because it meant he might see Zaraeth again after he left the station. His departure date was approaching fast. The Horizon's Edge would be leaving in 2 days. Jake had mixed feelings. He had accomplished his mission and more. He had proven that humans could hold their own. But he was also leaving behind the first real friendship he had made with an alien, and that was harder than he expected. On his last night at the station, Jake met Zaraeth in one of the observation lounges. The room had floor-to-ceiling windows looking out into space. Stars wheeled past slowly as the station rotated. It was quiet and peaceful, a stark contrast to the chaos of a week ago. They sat together watching the stars. For a while neither spoke. Then Zaraeth broke the silence. "I will miss these conversations, Lieutenant. You have taught me much. Not just about combat, but about perspective. About not judging others based on assumptions." Jake smiled. "You taught me things too, Commander. About honor and tradition. About the value of discipline and structure. The Velkari have much to be proud of." Zaraeth turned to look at him. "When I challenged you at the reception, I did it to embarrass you, to put you in your place. I thought humans were primitives playing at being space explorers. I was arrogant and foolish." "You were not foolish," Jake said. "You were confident. There is a difference. And you were willing to learn when you saw evidence that challenged your beliefs. That takes real strength." Zaraeth reached across and took his hand. The gesture was surprisingly intimate. Among Velkari, physical contact was reserved for close bonds. Jake felt the weight of it. "Will you return to this station, Jake Morrison?" "As often as I can," he promised. "And if your proposal for military exchanges is approved, maybe we will work together again. I would like that very much. There is still much you can teach me about human tactics, and I have barely begun to show you what Velkari warriors are truly capable of." They sat in comfortable silence for a while longer, hands clasped, watching the universe turn. Jake thought about everything that had happened. He had come to this station expecting to be dismissed and looked down upon. Instead, he had earned respect, made allies, and proven that humanity had something valuable to contribute to the galactic community. But more than any of that, he had found a connection with someone who understood him. Zara was a warrior like him. She knew the weight of responsibility, the burden of leadership, the lonely road of a soldier's life. They came from different worlds, but in the ways that mattered, they were the same. "When you challenged me to show you what my weapon could do," Jake said quietly, "I do not think either of us expected it to lead to this." Zara smiled. "No, I expected to watch you fail and prove my point. Instead, you showed me that true strength comes not from technology, but from the warrior who wields it. You showed me that humanity, despite being newcomers, has earned their place among the stars through courage and skill. Most importantly, you showed me that we have more to gain from cooperation than from competition." Jake squeezed her hand gently. "And you showed me that not all aliens view us as primitives, that some are willing to look past our rough edges and see what we can become. You gave me hope for humanity's future in the galaxy." They stayed in the observation lounge until the station's night cycle ended, and artificial dawn began to brighten the corridors. When they finally parted, it was with the understanding that this was not goodbye. It was just until next time. The next morning, Jake boarded the Horizon's Edge with his gear. Victoria Chen was there to see him off. "You did good work here, Lieutenant. The reports I'm sending back to Earth paint you as a hero. Expect a promotion when you get home." Jake shook his head. "I was just doing my job. The real heroes were the station security who held the line until we could help, and the Velkari warriors who fought alongside us." Victoria smiled. "Humble too. That is very human of you. Safe travels, Lieutenant. I think we will be seeing great things from you in the future." As the Horizon's Edge undocked from the station, Jake stood at the viewport one last time. He could see the observation deck where he and Zara had spent their last night together. A figure stood there now, tall and unmistakable even at this distance. Zara raised her hand in farewell. Jake returned the gesture, his hand pressed against the viewport. The ship's engines engaged and they began to pull away. The station grew smaller in the viewport, but Jake did not feel sad. He felt hopeful. The challenge that had started everything, that moment when Zara had demanded to see what his weapon could do, had opened doors that nobody expected. He had shown her what human weapons could do. But more importantly, he had shown her what humans could do. Their resilience, their adaptability, their refusal to be underestimated or dismissed. He had proven that humanity might be new to the galactic stage, but they were not to be taken lightly, and in return, Zara had given him something equally valuable. She had given him respect. She had shown him that aliens were not all the same, that some were willing to look past preconceptions and judge based on merit. She had become a friend in a galaxy where humanity desperately needed friends. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders. Humanity was just beginning to explore it. There would be challenges ahead, conflicts and misunderstandings and obstacles to overcome. But Jake knew now that humans were not alone. They had allies. They had people willing to stand beside them. As the Horizon's Edge jumped to faster than light speeds and the stars stretched into lines, Jake thought about the future, about the military exchanges that might happen, about working with Zara again, about all the possibilities that had opened up because one alien warrior had challenged one human soldier to prove himself. "Show me what that weapon can do, human." That had been the challenge. And Jake had answered it, not just with bullets and precision shooting, but with courage, honor, and the willingness to fight alongside allies for a common cause. The weapon itself was just a tool. What really mattered was the person holding it. Their training, their discipline, their commitment to something larger than themselves. That was what Zara had really seen during their time together. Not just what the weapon could do, but what the warrior behind the weapon could do. And Jake had proven that humans, despite their primitive technology and their rough edges and their short time among the stars, were warriors worthy of respect. They were survivors. They were fighters. They were explorers who refused to back down from any challenge. In the end, that was the real answer to Zara challenge. The weapon could do impressive things in the right hands, but the human holding the weapon could do even more impressive things. They could earn respect. They could make allies. They could prove their worth not through boasting, but through action. Jake smiled to himself as he headed to his quarters. The mission had been a success beyond anything he had imagined. And somewhere out there on a distant space station, a Velkari commander was probably thinking the same thing. They had both learned valuable lessons. And they had both found something neither had expected to find. The stars awaited, full of promise and possibility. Humanity's journey among them was just beginning. But thanks to what had happened at the Andromeda Trading Nexus, it was a journey they would not have to make alone. They had proven themselves. They had earned their place. And they had made friends along the way. That in the end was worth more than any weapon.